As foreign troops, international powers, and private contractors tighten their grip on Haiti, the country is facing one of its worst crises in modern history. And now, a new US-backed gang suppression force is raising fears of another occupation. So is this really about restoring order? Or is it about maintaining control? This week on UpFront, I'll ask that question to activist and scholar Jemima Pierre. Jemima Pierre, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thanks so much for having me.
Haiti is in the midst of one of its worst crises in decades. Over 1 million people have been internally displaced. Nearly 6 million people, over half the population, are facing high levels of food insecurity. From your perspective, how would you describe Haiti on the ground in day-to-day life right now?
I think Haiti on the ground is, I think it's very difficult. Speaking to family members there, things are difficult, especially in the capital area, which is what I actually want to make sure that people know that there's a difference between Port-au-Prince and then the rest of the country. Haiti is a country of, I think, 13 million people. And so a large number of them have moved to the capital. And so a lot of the crisis, especially around security and so on, is in the capital. And so we have to think about that. So in that sense, it's difficult. But it's also difficult because there's an economic marginalization that's always been an issue in Haiti, economic exploitation of the large masses of people. And it's, it's been really made worse by IMF policies that were pushed on the puppet governments, where they removed fuel subsidies, for example, in a couple of years ago, which meant that prices went up by 40% overnight. And so it's a combination of things that is, there's security, which people always focus on, but there's economic policies that have been forced onto the population that's made their lives a lot worse than it could be.
You mentioned the IMF. Talk a little bit more, not just about the IMF, but about the kind of broader forces that are driving this crisis, because there is a very public, dominant narrative that this is a self-inflicted crisis because the Haitian people are not governing properly.
Yeah, and the question is then how many days do you have for me to tell you the story? The reality is you cannot talk about Haiti in terms of the constant discussion around gangs and crisis as if everything that happens to Haiti or violence as if that's something that's endemic, that's in the blood of the Haitian people to always already be violent, which itself is a very racist narrative. So what we'd have to do is really think about what's happening. The current moment, I place blame on the 2004 coup d'etat against Haiti's democratically elected president, when France, the US, and Canada met the winter before in Ottawa, and decided that they did not want this government because it wasn't pushing the neoliberal policies that it wanted fast enough. And so you have this coup d'etat where the U.S. Marines land at the home of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, put him on a plane and flew him to Africa in 2004. And so between 2004 and now, what you've had is once they came in, they dismantled the Haitian government. They removed the prime minister, installed a man who had not lived in Haiti in 30 years, created this new council of elders, and then within days were able to get the UN Security Council, of which two members are permanent, two members of the coup governments, right? France and the US are permanent members.
Right.
Were able to have a UN Security Council basically agree to a so-called peacekeeping mission, which basically consecrated the coup.
Peacekeeping mission. Can we unpack that a little bit? Because whenever I hear the word peace from certain people, I get nervous.
Right. So peacekeeping, Haiti and parts of Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo in particular, are places where there's a continuous occupation by United Nations forces. And so, but this peacekeeping mission was really interesting in that the U.S. was able to get Brazil under Lula, which is a leftist government, to basically lead this mission. So basically, they called it a stabilizing mission. But this is a stabilizing mission after they'd removed the president, and there was a lot of violence against the popular political party in Haiti at the time, which was the Lavalas Party, which came into being in early early 1990 as a groundswell movement, and that brought in Jean-Bertrand Aristide as the president. So he was couped twice. There was a coup against him in 1991 by the CIA. He was in office for 9 months, but he was the first first democratically elected president in 1991. And they removed him from power in 9 months. And then he was in the U.S. and then was brought back after he agreed to neoliberal mandates, was brought back under Bill Clinton in 1994 and was only allowed to serve out the last 9 months of his term. And so then, so you have that. And then in 2000, he ran and got the majority of the votes again. And so what you have is this coup d'etat happening. And after that, there hasn't been any really clear and fair elections, so much so that in 2010, there were elections with Michel Martelly, which was the former star, where, less than 20% of the population participated in the elections. So from then we've had the slow dismantling of the state, because you don't have regional elections. Martelly's running by mandate, and then he puts in two irregular elections again in 2016 with the help of the so-called international community. He's in power. All this is happening under the auspices of peacekeeping, right? Because this is what I wanted to get back to that question. So you have this peacekeeping mission at any given time between 6,000 and 12,000 soldiers in Haiti to stabilize a government that had been installed by the U.S. government. And there was a political group called the Core Group, which was made without Haitians, which included Brazil, Germany, the European Union, the Organization of American States, that basically decided what was going on in Haiti, that coordinated the peacekeeping mission. And they were there. I remember going to Haiti, where my family lives in Plateau Central, which is like the middle part, my family in the countryside, those outside of Port-au-Prince, and seeing huge tanks just drive through these tiny little towns. Haiti was not a country at war. So it was one of the first places where there was not a war, there was not a civil war, but they sent this Chapter 7 mission. And Chapter 7 means you can use whatever force you can against the population. And this.
Let me pause you for a second, because you're saying a couple of things that are super interesting. As you're talking about these European nations, and certainly these non-black nations, taking control, making very, as you describe it, paternalistic decisions about Haiti's future, I have to ask what role race plays in this. I mean, imperialism is everywhere, right? But is there something specific about a free, black, governed nation that lends itself to a certain kind of colonial logic?
Of course. Well, I mean, we'd have to know Haiti's history, right? Haiti's history is the first free. It was the first free nation in the Western Hemisphere, because the U.S. was not a free nation. So Haiti's the second independent nation in the Western Hemisphere, and people need to know that, right? And Haiti became independent as a result of a slave revolt, where Africans, the enslaved Africans, rose up against the masters and took over and became a republic where no slavery was allowed, no racial discrimination was allowed. So it was a democratic country, as opposed to the U.S., which still had slavery. And as a result of that, it questioned the myth of white supremacy, right? This idea that these Africans, these enslaved Africans, could walk around thinking that they had sovereignty, has always been part of that. Part of the calculus in terms of representations of Haitians. And so from the Haitian Revolution, you have, if you look at the European press, these views of Haitians as savages, right? Savages killing white people, raping white women, right? And you can see that even now, like, you can look at the news media just maybe 2-3 years ago, where they're like, Haiti's, they're cannibals going around. Haitians are cannibals. So you have that. And there's a New York Times, I was looking at this report, there's a New York Times article from 1921, when the U.S. occupied Haiti for 19 years, from 1915 to 1934, where the headline is, Haitians eat a U.S. Marine. right? This idea of like
Eating
these black,
a U.S.
No,
Marine.
people should look this up because it's really fascinating. Because so there's this view of Haitians as being more savage than there are stereotypical view of Africans, and that's been going on for 220 years.
Absolutely.
And so how is it that all of a sudden this narrative around gang violence is there, and everyone believes they're saying cannibalism and so on, and people believe that primarily is because of this idea that this black nation that freed itself from slavery should never be considered free, and how dare they? And I think that really goes into our view of Haiti in very particular ways. Our willingness to accept the narrative around Haiti, accept the narrative around the inability to rule itself, to have good governance, is really based in that deep desire to not see these black people as capable of being sovereign.
One of the things that people point to, as you just mentioned, is the gangs. That's the evidence for the need for intervention, for control, for boots on the ground, for moral panic, for civic crisis. All the things come up. They say the gangs. After years of ostensible violence and state collapse, the UN authorized a Kenyan-led mission in 2023, backed by the United States, to help Haiti's police take back the country from the most powerful gangs. Now, since the deployment, the bloodshed has actually gotten worse. Right. In 2024 alone, more than 5,600 Haitians were killed, most of them after the Kenyan force arrived. How do you make sense of the project itself, the mission, but also why has it failed to bring security?
Well, I always go back to the fact that Haiti is under occupation. It's been under occupation since 2004. You have this UN so-called stabilizing mission. You have the core group, which is still intact, by the way. Its mandate is renewed every year. Yeah. Things have gotten worse from 2004 to 2025 while under UN tutelage. And what you had was protests by the people saying, why are you intervening, always meddling in Haitian affairs? And the protests that began, especially around the installation of Ariel Henry, who was the prime minister that U.S. installed, was around the fact that Haiti, we wanted elections. We wanted a democratic process that the U.S. was not supporting, because it was supporting this puppet government, because it wanted to install its economic policies, but also have Haiti as a staging ground for its military, right? I mean, let's be real. That's the reality. So the so-called peacekeeping mission in 2004, for example, was done to get, and the WikiLeaks papers reveal this was a way to actually get the UN to pay for a military occupation that the U.S. wanted, with buy-in from the region. Because peacekeeping missions, what they do is the UN can pay for soldiers from all over, from countries. We have people from countries from like Rwanda, Malaysia. All of these soldiers were in Haiti under the auspices of the UN, but this was to do the dirty work of the U.S. And so they did not want U.S. soldiers the U.S. does not want boots on the ground. What they want is allies to come and do that work.
There's been a shift now. The UN Security Council, with sponsorship from the United States and Panama, I believe, has decided to replace the Kenyan force with a new gang suppression force. This is about 5,500 troops. They'll have more latitude, allegedly, in terms of policing and military operations on the ground. As you know, maybe you'll be shocked to know, many scholars and experts are saying this isn't going to work either. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's a travesty. I think for me, it's always been, why is it that the first response to anything happening to Haiti is a violent one? It's a violent one with foreign forces, with military power to kill the people. I don't know if you've heard, Eric Prince, former big mercenary from Blackwater, they had a contract from an illegal Haitian presidential council that was installed by the U.S. to come into Haiti and bring in equipment, military equipment and arms. And recently, there's a drone attacks in Haiti that killed a bunch of kids at a birthday party, right? So my question is, why is it that it's so easy to think of Haiti as like the first thing to do, not work to actually install a to help install a political solution. The first one is a violent solution. When we know that Haiti does not manufacture guns, it does not manufacture bullets, that all the military equipment that you see in the hands of these young men come from the U.S. You think that guns and ammunition comes through these private ports, which are privately owned, by the way, by these families, the bourgeoisie, the Haitian elite. You think people don't know where these guns come from to basically wreak havoc so that Haiti remains in chaos, so that we can use that as an excuse to basically make it a staging ground for U.S. military force, but not call it that, right? And what the U.S. has done with this thing called the Global Fragilities Act is find a way to not have boots on the ground, but to use local forces. Of course, it's going to...
And around Latin America, I mean, one of the things I've been fascinated by is that they're asking Caribbean and Latin American countries to bring folk in, to intervene.
In Haiti.
Yeah, in
and
Haiti.
Everyone's willing to do it, right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, there's a long tradition of kind of regional solidarity.
Not with Haiti. But, Mexico has a leftist government right now. It had a leftist government under AMLO. And AMLO actually was the one that was pushing for the Kenyan forces to come and was a co-pen holder with the U.S. to writing for this military intervention. This is Mexico with the cartels. Because why isn't the UN sending a gang suppression force for the cartels in Mexico? Or in Jamaica, major gang problems, Trinidad. So we always have to question, why is it that, where you have more, the Mexican cartels are much more armed than the police.
Yeah.
Haitians, the arms are not that great. And so why is it that we can allow the chaos to be created and then say, oh, we need to just bring in more what we need now is a gang suppression force that's also not a UN force. That they give it the veneer of the UN because they vote through the UN Security Council, and they convince everyone, they bribe everyone to go along with it, so much so that, the two countries that have always vetoed, they're like, Haiti does not need another multinational invasion force like the Minister force that caused like 40,000 deaths just by bringing cholera to the country, sexual exploitation. It's being sued for all the children left behind that it fathered with rapes of young girls and rapes of boys. And so the Russian and Chinese members of the UN Security Council have always said no, but then they were really pressured by the U.S. push to CARICOM countries, and then this fake government, the Presidential Council, basically saying we need this force.
How do you though make sense of the gang presence? I mean, in Port-au-Prince right now, almost all of Port-au-Prince is under gang control. I've read your writing very carefully. I've heard you talk about gangs in a very complicated way. What are we missing about this? Because to the average person, if you say, hey, the police have lost complete control of the capital city, gangs are controlling everything, this can't be a good thing.
It can't be a good thing, but it's something that's I think it's controlled chaos. Because you can stop the violence by stopping the arms transport and the ammunition. And that flows in continuously. So the so-called gang problem is that you've always had these small groups in things, but you did not hear the language of like gangs overtaking Haiti until about 5-6 years ago, after the protests and so on and so forth. And what you're realizing is the dumping of guns and stuff. The U.S. did that in El Salvador in the 90s, right? In terms of like funding and arming gangs, creating chaos. And I think it's the dumping of military grade weapons into Haiti, but also a political vacuum because of the coup d'etat. There is no elected official in Haiti. Whereas other places where you can have a state of emergency, you can have a president and parliament deal with this. In Haiti, there's a vacuum, there's a political vacuum, which is by design, that allows things to proliferate. And as the economy goes bad, it's easier to recruit young people into some of these groups of armed roving bands. But to
particularly
me,
if their needs aren't being met socially and economically.
Socially, you have inflation high, you have factories closing, you have people, because of U.S. neoliberal policy, which Bill Clinton apologized for, of dumping rice on Haiti and destroying the Haitian rice industry, where the U.S. forced Haiti to kill 95% of its Creole pig population so that it could bring pigs from Ohio. You know, you have all these economic policies as well as political policies that actually work to create this vacuum for sovereignty. It's about like keeping aside Haitian sovereignty. In fact,
which is a long-standing question. I mean, in Africa, in the Middle East, I mean, Europe has often said these are ungovernable people, or certainly self-governance is an impossibility. Or we've had mandates and mandatory periods that they need decades before they'll be okay. That seems to be what's happening here a little bit. How do you shift the political arrangement? How do you get to a point where Haiti can be sovereign, where Haiti can self-govern, and where it can produce its own elected officials again?
It can, and you know, in early 2021, late 2020, right before Jovenel Moïse, who was installed fraudulently with the help of the OAS in the U.S., there's large groups of the Haitian civil society came together and said, we're going to have a transition. And there are all these groups working together. They had these plans, and the most prominent, of course, is the Montana group, and they all these plans for like a 2-year transition model where they'd have a presidential council outside of foreign intervention. They were saying, we have our own plan, leave us alone. The U.S. does not want to leave us alone. Right. You know, the truth is, leave us alone. And I've always said that. And I do think the Haitian elite.
So if I'm reading you right, leaving us alone would mean
stopping the arms.
Right, stop arming people. Troop withdrawal, also stop funding and
but
arming.
We still have the core group making political decisions for Haiti, right? And so you have that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a core group that makes decisions for Haiti. Things have gotten worse since the coup d'etat in 2004. So obviously there's something wrong. Haiti was much better when, you know, before the coup d'etat. Stop intervening. Stop the U.S. can stop the arms transports to Haiti. It can do that. Haitian civil society can come together and work on their own to do things. You know, like, you know, in the countryside, even without a formal state presence, people get things done. You know, there's this thing called combit in Haitian society, which is a coming together. So when farmers need to farm, they all get together and work on one farmer's land when it's time for, you know, for planting, when it's time for harvesting. And so what needs to happen is actually another revolution in Haiti, because absent that, a revolution that transforms the political economic institutions of the country, we're bound to be stuck in this, where you have nonstop intervention from the West. Everyone's afraid of the U.S., right? And you talk to Haitians who are radicals and politicians and intellectuals who say, well, you got to deal with the U.S., so you can't, you know. Yeah. But what I want to leave with is for people to understand that you can talk all you want about bad governance and bad Haitian actors. Everything that happens in Haiti cannot happen without the outside forces. The external pressures impact the internal realities.
One more question for you. If the U.S. withdraws, if they stop funding weapons, if they mind their own business, if they, as you said, leave you alone, what does Haiti become in the near future?
I think we need to trust the one country where enslaved Africans, under the worst odds, when slavery was still legal all over, were able to come out of that victorious against the most powerful army, which is Napoleon's army at the time. We need to remember that. We need to remember that this is the history, that people can come out of the worst situations and become free and sovereign. And I think we need to trust that. I trust the Haitian people to be able to do their own thing. I trust the Haitian people to work with people that they want to work with and not have impositions from the West. I think if Haitians turn to their brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and work together for things that are outside of U.S. strategic policy, outside of the U.S. policy requirements, what the U.S. wants to do with Haiti, I think Haiti can do what it needs to do with its people. There's enough there to do what they need to do. But we have to trust that process. And we don't want to trust that. But remember, we came out when there was nothing there. There's no model for what Haiti came out of. There was no model for Haiti. There was no model for the Haitian Revolution like that. And I think we should trust that.
Jemima Pierre, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thanks so much for having me.